My name is Andrew Cleary, and you are listening to the F1 Podcast.
What's up, everyone? It is Ricci here from the F1 Podcast. Today is September 27th, 2023, and we are recording this a couple of days after the Grand Prix, Japanese Grand Prix. I am here with Andrew. Andrew, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. Ricci, how are you doing?
I'm good. I was at the Canada women's soccer game last night. They beat Jamaica and qualified for the Olympics. So it was great sport. Actually, I think it was the highest number of fans watching a game at BMO Field for women's soccer, I believe. So that was like really great to see. I think it was 29,000 fans, but it was good. It was good.
Great to see them have it, be able to defend their gold medal at the Olympics. And we honestly wish them nothing but the best.
We are sitting at 622 followers on Instagram. Still trying to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. So we really encourage everyone to follow us. Also, we're on TikTok and all the other social media channels. Red Bull's back.
The team can celebrate Mitten Kings this past weekend because they won their 6th World Constructors Championship, which was, bound to happen eventually, considering how dominant they were. But their main man, Max Verstappen, crossed the line P1 to win his 13th, to get his 13th win of the season. Who else, right, would, carry the team on the shoulders and bring them to a World Constructors Championship victory other than Max Verstappen?
And let's just think about that. Like, talk about after, because everyone kind of, Red Bull has always those, it's historically have had hiccups in Singapore before. And other than Sergio Perez winning in, I think it was last year, 2022. And then it doesn't, back to like Sebastian Vettel in 2013. But like, talk about Verstappen, dominant FP1, dominant FP2, FP3, and qualifying. I'm pretty sure he was almost like, was it a full second ahead of everybody else in qualifying in the final lap? It was ridiculous how far ahead of he was. And I think he won this week's race by 19 seconds.
Everyone will have their fun for a week. Everybody think, oh, was this the, could Red Bull lose 2 in a row here? And Max is like, yeah, no. He absolutely just destroyed the field this weekend. His first lap in Q3 was quicker than any other lap time that got set in Q3. But then, instead of it, he just decided to go smash his own time and get into the 128s, which is just so impressive at Suzuka. He was not screwing around this weekend whatsoever. Another dominant performance by him is kind of the theme we're going on this season, to be honest with you. And it was interesting to watch for sure, considering how poor his teammate did.
Yeah, and I think just before we get into Sergio Perez, because I think there's definitely a lot to talk about how the weekend that he's had, or maybe the season he's had, even though he's second. So the Dutchman now heads into Qatar in the knowledge that he can clinch his 3rd successive title in Saturday sprint with 6 Grand Prix to go. So according to Reddit, 6 races to go. Yeah, it's really, so if Max finished P6 or higher, regardless of where Perez finishes, Max finishes P7, Checo doesn't win. Max finishes P8, Checo P3 or lower, or both fail to score points, P9 or lower, he can win at the Qatar sprint. Not even the race, the sprint.
Obviously, the format of the sprint has helped him along the way because that was, keys to gaining significant points there for him in this title. But yeah, just to think that he could win it before even stepping foot onto or setting his car onto the grid for this, with 6 races to go, mind-boggling, and just a testament to how incredible of a driver he's been this season, how credible of a car Adrian Newey has provided him to drive, and just honestly how incredible all the engineers, everybody at the factory, and even the team on site during race day have been to put that car in a position where it should win every weekend. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how many seconds they're going to win by.
It's interesting that you kind of mentioned that because especially after this weekend, let's get to Sergio Perez. As one kind of Red Bull driver succeeds and crushes the field, the other one has a dismal weekend, a poor getaway, into the pack, led to a collision with Lewis Hamilton and damaged the car. The Mexican even got into it with Haas of Kevin Magnussen. He picked up a 5-second penalty, and then also he parked his. And by that time, then literally nothing else was going for him. So then they just retired the car.
You know what? I thought it was a really neat opportunity to pay homage to Nintendo there. Nintendo being a Japanese multinational company. Perez is playing their best game, I think, that they've created on the track this week in Mario Kart.
Do a barrel roll.
Because he was the bullet, and he just had the bullet flying around all weekend, hitting into everybody. But unfortunately, Checo didn't have the golden mushroom. He wasn't invincible. And
Dude, he didn't even have. He didn't have the blue shell.
The blue shell. He had such big. He was so bad this weekend. I was out with some friends on Saturday night, and I was going to say shout out to Joe Cools in London. They put the race on for me at 1 p.m. on their main TV so that we could
1 p.m.
watch, or 1 a.m. Sorry,
yeah,
1 a.m. so we could watch the into the final hours of the night there at the bar, watch the start of it. We were watching, Checo with an abysmal start, having colliding with Hamilton, having to go through a front wing change. And then he gets a 5-second penalty for safety car infringement, in which he then has to serve, goes back out, fights Kevin Magnussen, and you could just see he tried to make a move into the hairpin. And I'm watching this live on TV at the bar, and I'm just cringing because you can just see this happening where he goes for the inside gap that's clearly not there, and just runs into the back of Magnussen, creating a collision on his front wing, which then he has to go back in and change. So with all that said and done, he retires from the race. As I think it just wasn't his day. Ironically enough, he had a 5-second penalty as a result of the collision with Magnussen. So he had to go back out 6 laps later to serve his penalty, in which then they retired the car again. So if you were to tell me that Red Bull had a double DNF this weekend, but it was the same person, I wouldn't have believed you.
You lose.
Well, his retirement ended Red Bull's 100% finishing record and leaves him you got to think about this. We talked about this multiple times throughout the kind of okay, well, if Max is going to go away with this, who is going to end up P2? Because he's now starting to get some heat from Hamilton in the fight for P2 in the driver's standing. Hamilton's only 33 points behind. It's where does also Hamilton's getting all these points out of just scrapping back and forth and getting them?
Well, think about Singapore last weekend, how he capitalized on George's mistake to finish up in the podium positions there. This weekend again, interesting team orders in the sense that he kind of went past
there was a lot of team orders this weekend, I found.
Mercedes, Alpine was very hot drama. We'll get into that too, but it's quite interesting because how Max has given the same car as Checo, and Checo's 167 points behind him. Incredible.
So I think let's kind of shift gears. The junior team, I think the news came out this weekend that but AlphaTauri, they are going to have Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki back in the grid next year. And I literally just feel bad for Liam Lawson because this guy is driving he definitely deserves a seat, but there's not been really any opportunities for him going forward. Horner has gone on the record to note that Lawson has a guaranteed seat in 2025. And he will be Red Bull's reserve driver in 2024. I don't know. I felt like he had wheel-to-wheel battle with Tsunoda at the start. He finished ahead of Tsunoda at Suzuka. And this is his first proper race. I think he clearly deserves a seat next year. And I don't know who it would be. Maybe Williams, Logan Sargent after this weekend. But
the two Grand Prix before that, Lawson really hadn't had a chance to battle Tsunoda head on, right? Because Tsunoda had twice DNF'd early on in the race, right? But from the minute that the lights went out, it was pretty much wheel-to-wheel driving for the first lap, between Tsunoda and Lawson. I think Lawson kind of took this news personally this weekend, which he should, because he's done everything in his power and the opportunity that he's been given over these past 3 races to showcase why he deserves a seat in F1. He's beaten Tsunoda now all 3 times in the Grand Prix. And then this one was actually a true result, in my opinion, of beating him because they both finished the full race length in that case. And to beat, Yuki at his home GP as well. You know, it's just, to me, that says something, right, in that case. And I clearly think he deserves a seat for 2024. Now, if he doesn't get a seat for 2024, he's guaranteed that seat for 2025. You effectively have 4 people covering 3 remaining seats, right? Because you know, where does Checo go, right? Is it the end of the line for Checo? And then if does Yuki go up and replace Checo at Red Bull? And then you have Danny and Lawson, you know, staying at AlphaTauri, or, you know, what ends up happening? But just what ends up happening to the overall programs together, because Danny's injury couldn't have come at a worse time for him. Just getting back into a Formula One seat and then breaking his hand, and he won't be racing in Qatar again. Like, Lawson will be racing. That's what the reports are saying right now, is Lawson's going to be taking a spot at the seat again for Qatar. I don't know if you're Lawson, if you really want to be waiting until 2025 either to be raced, to, you know, have a seat in Formula One. In that case, do you potentially look elsewhere? I know that Horner was saying that his exit clause was quite a significant amount of money, and their overall contract, I can't speak to that, but, you know, Albon's done it before, so why can't you do it? You know, Gasly's done it too in the theory, so why can't you?
Well, look at Oscar Piastri. Let's just talk about, like, both the Papayas looked amazing this weekend, and I think this is their first double podium. I think back to maybe like Italy 2021, where they're both on the podium at the same time, I think. But I mean, Oscar catching his first rookie podium in his rookie season. I don't remember the last time someone was able to do that. Man, Alpine just lost out with him.
He is such a good, he's got great racecraft. He started in P2. Yeah, Lando took him over at the start of the race, but man, he was just able to fight through it, keep his position at P3. Lando had a pretty good Max, a pretty good scare at the start through the S's there in the first sector, with eventually Max pulling through. But man, McLaren, I think I've never seen a team just come back in terms of development that the way they have this year, like literally unheard of. And, just hats off to Zach Brown, because, I was just, especially early on, we were considering whether or not he would be the right fit, still the right fit for maintaining or managing the F1 team. And clearly his moves to bring on Andrea Stella as the team principal have clearly paid off, given the time. And then they've really been able to develop just an absolute car that is a rocket ship out there, no matter where they go. So that has just been seen really impressive for a team. On the flip side, we look at Alpine, a team that's just had everything go wrong for them the past 18 months, continues to go wrong in that sense.
I think for people that don't know, like, yes, there are team orders in Formula One for those that are probably listening for the first time. If the team thinks that maybe driver 2 is much significant faster than driver 1, they will instruct them to let them pass. However, it found that they were just like, I'll let him pass. And then they backtrack. No, you need to let Ocon, or you need to let Gasly. And then apparently just like Gasly was blowing a fuse on the radio this weekend. I feel like it's just not Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, but like it's polar opposites from like McLaren. Like all the bad energy from McLaren is now gone down to Alpine.
Yeah, because so during the race, like Ocon was instructed to let Gasly through, because at the time they were fighting Alonso for P8, and Gasly had the quicker car, or he was faster on the tire at that point. So he was able to get past. He was let through by Ocon to go after Alonso. Now he wasn't able to catch up to Alonso because Alonso finished P8, but on the last lap, Gasly was instructed by his race engineer to let Ocon back through. And Gasly was pissed because Ocon was pretty much 2.4 seconds behind Gasly at the time of the radio call message that came in right before the last chicane. So what Gasly does is he just slams on the brake going into the final turn to let Ocon through. And you have to go, if there is a chance, every week, after every race, F1 posts the radio. The driver's radio at the end of the line. Like when they cross the line, they have the driver's radio. I recommend everyone go find that on their YouTube page skip to 445 because that's where the magic starts, man. It's when Gasly gets found out that he needs to let Ocon pass, and he is just flipping out, claiming that he was faster, in that Alpine sabotaged his race by letting Ocon undercut him earlier on as part of their strategy. And then it came to a point where he's going down the pit wall towards the end, and you can see on his helmet, on his cam, he's giving the middle finger to the Alpine wall as he's going through.
No way.
Yeah.
What?
So this
How did I
guy
miss that?
Oh, he was just on another level after the race this week. And it's a new team this year for you. I understand you're trying to make an impression. But that just does more harm than good at the end of the day. When Ricci, they're battling for P9 and P10. It's 1 point. It's not like it's for the race win. It's legit for 1 point difference for the team.
Team orders was like kind of maybe the buzzword that like questionable strategies throughout, like Mercedes. I don't know about you, but like Lewis almost put George off. And like George made a comment, like, are we fighting each other or are we fighting other drivers? Like, figure it out.
I did see that part of the race too, where Hamilton did push Russell wide. But I think this was Lewis's way of saying, I'm number one here, buddy. Let's not forget about this overall, because he did pass him. And then also by doing so, he made him susceptible to Sainz, who easily overtook him, and George could not recover at all. So that was quite interesting to see another top 5 finish for Lewis Hamilton. Because you know what? He is the number 1 driver on that team, considering that he is fighting for P2 in the Drivers' Championship right now, all things considered. And they pretty much, I want to say, could have, I can see them kind of wrapping up P2 in the constructors fairly soon. I know they're only 20 points away from Ferrari. But I think just the way that they are right now in terms of levelness, I can see there come kind of similar results throughout for the final 6 races in terms of total points, team scores. Barring like a significant, collapse like we had last week, like we had in Singapore when Russell went into the wall and just completely screwed like 12 points for Mercedes in terms of the Constructors' Championship in that side. So should be quite an interesting fight for P2 in the finals, but I think Lewis has earned that right to be the number 1 driver, obviously, at Mercedes, being there the longest tenure, winning, 6 World Drivers' Championships with them. And it was just kind of I think that overtake just kind of reminded Russell of where his position was in the team this weekend.
Yeah, I know. It definitely was like interesting to see kind of like that play out. I've been kind of very interested just to see. And because like even like we go back to Singapore, just the dogfighting that they did towards the end of the race, where George was saying, or Lewis was saying, like George needs to go faster and stuff. We're like kind of just seeing that kind of play out. It's interesting because like we've kind of like been talking about like some of the bigger teams this week, and Logan Sargent just flew.
Crashes in P1 or Q1, doesn't set a time, has to fix his entire car before the race. He has to start from the pit lane because he went above the number of replacement parts required for that car. And then he had collision damage. I believe it was on lap, I forget what lap it was. Had another collision in lap 22 where he had the collision damage and had to retire. So just all in all, like he's just not a good weekend, especially not at the right time too, considering his seat's not guaranteed for next year at all, and he's not giving Williams a real chance, a real explanation as to why he should have that seat for next year.
Well, yeah, and especially like you got to think about it. I think that Williams is kind of going through like a very awkward phase right now. Like Albon's race was essentially over with the collision with Valtteri Bottas. I don't know. It's tough because like it also like Logan's kind of racking up that bill with all these crashes. I think he's leading like the Constructors' Championship. So it's definitely, I don't know. It's just, I feel for the guy. The confidence is probably not there anymore. And it's like, how do you go for the next 6 races with trying to like at least get points for your team?
Well, and then we bring it back to the Liam Lawson situation, right? At what point does Williams just not open the checkbook and say, hey, look, like we're going to cover any of the penalty costs potentially that you are going to be facing at Red Bull with exiting your contract early, and use like having him as the second driver to Albon in that Williams team. I think they would actually do potentially some serious damage and fight for some pretty significant points next year, considering the direction that team is going. So I don't see what stop. Honestly, after hearing like kind of everything go on with the extensions at AlphaTauri for Shinoda and Danny Rick, you're seeing Sargent just not perform well at all in his rookie season. I think you have to take a chance on Lawson and sign him.
What, Andrew? You're not available to drive Formula One?
Not if the AI level's at like 10.
Do a barrel roll.
I can do it if the AI level at 10.
Oh my gosh.
An auto transmission.
So let's quickly go through the top 10. As mentioned, we got Max Verstappen 1, Lando Norris 2, Oscar Piastri 3, Leclerc 4, Mercedes 5, Carlos 6, George Russell 7th, Fernando Alonso 8, and both Alpine drivers 9 and 10 in the points, and Liam Lawson coming P11. Yeah, I think overall, I think we saw like a good weekend of racing. I think definitely the weather held up when that was really good. So I don't know if you noticed, but apparently in the sections, there is specific, you can buy tickets to take photos at this certain part of the track. I don't know. Kim was talking about it. And that's like, I don't know if it's like a season ticket holder thing, but apparently a lot of people bring their cameras out this weekend, particularly in Suzuka.
I love how they dress up. I love how the Japanese fans dress up at Suzuka. The hats are incredible, where they have like the DRS hats and they pull a string to open up the rear wing to like operate the DRS. It's a lot of fun. They have a ton of passion. What I remember hearing from Vettel is that they stay after the race and they stay until they watch a replay of the race late at night, and they stay in the stands. And it's such an incredible atmosphere. They had a record weekend in terms of attendance this week, which is great to see. As the sport is growing, it's great to see that these venues are still growing on their record weekends in terms of attendance. And just I think it was honestly a lot of fun this weekend at Suzuka, and made up for last year's kind of reigning bit of a shit show in terms of how it all went down. So it made up for last year's race.
Can we talk about the bees? So if Vettel's back, he was able to bring pretty much everybody from the grid out for this beehive. I know he's a very big environmentalist. They helped construct 11 insect hotels on the inside of turn 2, and with the assistance of like a local craftsman, and all the drivers came out and supported. And I think they all did it by hand with barely any power tools too, which I thought was really cool to kind of see. But it seems that he was still very well liked on the track. People like adore him. He's kind of like a celebrity still. And I wonder if he's itching to be back in Formula One.
Well, he did have a interview with Martin Brundle this past week where he even said to him he's kind of kept himself in racing shape, minus the neck, but he would work on that, so to speak, in terms of coming back. So I think we can see him kind of come back in a new team role, kind of like what Schumacher did when he retired from Ferrari, then came back and helped Mercedes. I'm feeling he's going to be part of that Audi team in 2026.
Oh, I would love him in a Ferrari outfit again.
I don't think he'll be in a Ferrari outfit, big guy.
No.
I think he'll be in an Audi outfit. But I think Ferrari's in obviously a pretty good position with the two gentlemen that they have right now. They won't need Seb.
So to be clear, yes, I think we didn't really talk about Ferrari, but I think like overall, like I think it was definitely a decent weekend for them. They tried it, they competed well, but at this point, I don't know. I think the McLarens were just very hard for them to catch up, but I think good amount of points for them, and I think they can just be happy with that. I kind of see Vettel in more of an advisor role rather than a driver, but that would be like the dream come true. That's a really good catch up with what happened in Japan. Is there anything else that really stood out for you this weekend? Actually, forgot to mention this. Do you know that apparently no logos are allowed to be other than like people's suits so basically both Lando and Max and Oscar had their post-race interviews, and I guess I don't know what room that's called with all the media reporters, but apparently they're not allowed to have like actual endorsement bottles or drinks on them other than their jackets. So they had to hide the logos of their like Red Bull and their Coca-Cola bottle, and then just drink water out of like a no-name cup or glass.
A rule, was that like a Japan-based rule in terms of like media, or I don't say censorship, but format?
Yeah, I don't know, because that's really interesting, because we know that I know teams that have like alcohol sponsorships, I think in certain countries they have to remove those sponsorships or just kind of hide them completely, or tobacco. I know tobacco is kind of banned, but I don't know if e-cigs. But yeah, I know there's certain countries where they have to hide certain advertisements. But I didn't really didn't really expect like a Coca-Cola or a Red Bull, but I also found that like very interesting.
Overall, I think it was a gut check back to reality for the F1 season here in Japan. We had our moment in Singapore where everyone kind of had the new life, but Max was able to get the job done for the World Drivers' Championship, for Red Bull to win their 6th. And honestly, it's we're get the champagne ready on Saturday, baby, because he's going to win that sprint race and he's going to have the World Drivers' Championship locked up by the time Saturday's finished.
He's going to win the race, no problem. So it's like, yeah, just kudos to Red Bull for constructors. Max Verstappen probably has the executive suite ready to party in after Qatar.
But personally, for me, what I'm really focusing on in the final few races here is the battle for P2 in the World Drivers' Championship. Can Hamilton overtake Perez in that case? And then the battle for P2 in the Constructors' Championship between Ferrari and Mercedes is significant. And then as well as it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When does McLaren surpass Aston Martin for P4? Those are my kind of 3 things that I'm looking for the final 6 races coming up, as well as being able to see. I'm interested to see when Vegas comes and see what that is going to be like on the strip.
So constructors, Red Bull is sitting at 623, Mercedes 305, Ferrari 285, Aston Martin 221, and McLaren 172. Yeah, curious I'm also just curious to see how things are just going to play out in Vegas, period. I've heard that like already streets are closed off, and apparently people that like didn't anticipate Formula One to be, well, people anticipated the race to be there, but how much has been closed off, and it's not even that weekend yet. It's been a lot. Apparently it's been on the tourism sector. It's like, it's been very hard to kind of move around that city at this time. And the race hasn't even started. So like kind of let's get into some news that we've kind of seen this weekend. Nick found a spot in Formula E.
I'm so happy for him, to be honest with you. I
thought he was going to go back to Harvard.
Well, he did, and then he had an opportunity. I think it's Mahindra racing team has now signed him for a spot in Formula E, and he had such a tumultuous season, just a terrible season this year. He had such a horrific start to his F1 campaign in that sense at AlphaTauri this year, that he was going to go back to school, but I think he still wants to be a race driver at the end of the day, and he's won in Formula E before as well. So why not go back and try and win another championship with Mahindra at that point? Yeah,
and I think he'll probably feel more comfortable there, and I think he'll probably enjoy his time there and maybe get that confidence. And if a spot does come up in Formula One, like maybe he'll give his shot again. But yeah, I know we obviously on behalf of the F1 podcast, we're wishing him like a lot of success, and hopefully he can be able to turn his career around. I don't know. Did you listen to the Adrian Newey podcast? Because he was on Beyond the Grid this week. Were you able to chance to listen to that?
I have not had a chance to listen to it, but I heard there was some interesting being thrown around there, especially with regards to your team.
Well, apparently they've offered him 3 offers to come join Ferrari, and quote, I would have been fabulous to work. It would have been great, emotionally fun to work with them, but
he's so sored out at Red Bull right now that he would never, why would he leave? They'll pay him so much money just to even stay.
Never working for the Ferrari leaves him with some regrets emotionally, as does not having the chance to design cars for F1 champions Alonso and Mercedes rival Hamilton.
Well, never say never, because Red Bull is one team to spice things up in the world of F1, and who knows, maybe Alonso becomes a driver for Red Bull at the end of the day.
We just need some silly seasons going on right now. It's been it's been a pretty quiet season in terms of changes or like announcements for next year.
But as a Ferrari fan, when you hear that, it's probably got to be a little frustrating in the sense that you could have had the greatest engineer in the entire, the past decade or so become your, kind of construct your car.
Believe they didn't offer him enough, or the culture was just not like, he's like, I'm not doing it. I think, and especially I think for a lot of these teams that are based in the UK, I think maybe it's much easier for them. Like, let's say if I work at Red Bull, I can go down to Aston Martin or McLaren. They're in the same country, but like to move all the way to Italy, maybe you would be asking for a lot of people. It's just the life of Formula One, I guess.
Not every day you get to hear kind of, the behind the scenes or what's in the mind of, the F1 greats, especially from a technical perspective. Can't wait to listen to that Beyond the Grid podcast interview.
I think that just ends off this week's episode. Erica couldn't make it. She was on a work trip, so she sends her best. Actually, Andrew, I just realized I didn't let you do the outro last time. So I think you need to do the outro this time. But anyways, I just want to just say thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of the F1 podcast covering the 2023 Japanese Grand Prix. We'll probably do a preview episode of Qatar next week and any new news that comes out. Make sure. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
As John said, make sure you please follow us on all our socials. We are now on TikTok, which is great. We are on Instagram at f1.podcast, and we are on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify for your podcast episodes. This has been season 3, episode 26, where John and I discussed the Japanese Grand Prix review. We hope everyone has a wonderful week, and we can't wait to come back next week with a little bit of preview of Qatar. And to determine, will Max win the World Drivers' Championship on the Saturday or the Sunday? But nevertheless, get the champagne ready out, baby, because we're going to be crowning the Dutch king again next week. Stay tuned for more episodes. Talk to everybody soon.